Chapter 101, Midterms, 5. Vroom. Taking a step into the dungeon, I felt the world around me twist. It first started with my eyesight, everything became black. Then it was my hearing, my sense of touch followed soon after, thereafter all my remaining senses disappeared. I felt nothing. It felt as if I was an insignificant speck of dust drifting in a lonely space. I soon after lost my sense of time. What may have been seconds felt like an eternity. Vroom. Foo. Finally, after an unknown period of time, hearing the faint sound of my breathing, I knew that my senses were returning. Because I had been through this situation before, back in the black market dungeon, I was somewhat able to adjust to the shift in sensations. Unlike last time, I didn't puke this time. Opening my eyelids, I found myself inside of a damp and dark environment. Instantly, a heavy scent of granite invaded my nostrils. Soon after, a cold gush of air brushed against my skin. Glancing around, I found many students grimacing and holding on to their stomachs, trying their best to not puke. Blarg. 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 Well, there was always bound to be a few people who couldn't hold out. With dungeons being off-limit to people who didn't have hero licenses, apart from a few, most of the students present had never been inside of a dungeon. Their reaction was understandable. Arriving and standing before us, a second-year student with a green lock uniform warmly smiled towards us. The student had short curly black hair that gently fell towards the side of his face, and his deep black eyes that seemed to carry a hit of warmth perfectly complemented his hair. He didn't look particularly outstanding, but he seemed to be an amiable person, instantly giving people a good impression of him. As he spoke, his deep yet pleasant voice traveled through each of the students' ears, calming them down. "All right, fellow students, I'll give you 5 minutes to recover before I'll start the next briefing." As soon as his words entered the students' ears, most of the students managed to regain their bearing. Surprised by this development, staring at the students who seemed to have suddenly magically recovered from their nausea, I fell into deep thought. Glancing at the air around me, I soon came to a realization. The thickness of the mana around us increased. I see, the second-year student must have embedded mana into his voice, creating a calming effect. Interesting. The second year before me successfully caught my attention. To be able to affect someone's mood with just a few words. Scary. This was especially so if they were against you. With just a few words, they could influence your state of mind. Imagine being in a battle and you suddenly found yourself losing the ability to think properly because of how angry you were. This can result in the opponent potentially making more mistakes, just like what had happened with Alex back in Galxicus. Glancing at him with interest, I couldn't help but think of recruiting him into my mercenary group. Though he never appeared in the novel, I couldn't help but be fascinated by his power. His power was definitely interesting. A pawn or an important piece? I'll have to observe more. Okay, now that everyone is better, I will keep this short. My name is Benjamin Hoare, and as you can see from my uniform, I'm a second-year student. I will briefly explain to you a couple of important things that you will need to know to ensure your safety as you start the examination, so please bear with me for a minute. Pointing towards his left where a set of gray combat suits were laid on the floor, Benjamin said. On my left over here, are a bunch of clothes that you will need to wear when crossing the dungeon. They are equipped with a tracking device as well as a defense mechanism that is able to withstand blows coming from E-ranked monsters at least once. This way we can preserve your life in case a dangerous situation arises. Pausing, and glancing at the students to make sure they understood what he had said, Benjamin smiled. After I finish briefing you on a couple of more things, you will be given a couple of seconds in order to change into those combat clothes. Please make sure you wear them as they are crucial in keeping you safe. And like that, Benjamin briefed us on a couple more things. To be honest, after hearing the first part, I pretty much stopped listening. It was just the usual safety precaution rules that I was briefed back in the dungeon of the black market. Nothing particularly important. After talking for a couple more minutes, smiling, Benjamin glanced at all of the students and concluded. "All right, that's pretty much everything for now. Please change into your combat suits and wait for me at the starting line of the dungeon." Nodding my head, I took a gray suit and quickly changed into it. Obviously, there were two piles, one for men and one for women. As I put on the suit, I couldn't help but be reminded of the suit I was made to wear back in the virtual reality class. Though it wasn't as tight, it wasn't any better as I felt my body become stiff. At the front of the suit, several black pads made out of special shock-absorbing materials were attached to the chest and abdomen areas of the suit, as well as the knees and elbows, and other important areas of the body. They were specifically put in those areas to cover the more vulnerable parts of the body. As I moved around with the suit on, though it was uncomfortable at first, I quickly got used to it. Arriving at the starting line of the dungeon, I did a few stretches to warm my muscles up. Bump. Ha. As I was stretching, feeling someone bump into me, I turned around. Soon I saw Arnold's figure standing a few meters from where I was standing. Glancing at me with utter disdain, he slowly uttered. "You better watch out inside of the dungeon, since there are no cameras. You never know what might happen." "Okay." Smiling politely, I nodded my head and moved a few meters back. "He still hasn't given up, huh?" "That's fine by me. I've already thought things through before." Along with the many other stares, I had noticed his stare back at the ranking evaluation. Compared to the other stares, his was the only one that contained obvious malicious intentions in it. I think Jean hadn't told him about what had happened back in Hallberg. Maybe because it slipped his mind or because he thought my rank was higher, Jean still hadn't told Arnold about me. This was good. Thinking back, I think the rest of the guys, just like Jean, probably thought I was going to be ranked higher. I guess in the end they still thought I was hiding my strength, as faking a rank with the orb wasn't that hard. There were certain artifacts in circulation that could limit someone's mana flow, making it so their rank was lower. However, doing so would take a long time and it was extremely painful, hence why most people refrained from doing so. Honestly, I'm glad Jean didn't say anything. I still had a grudge against Arnold for what he did to me back when I had just arrived in the virtual world. Though his parents' background was greater than mine, now that Jean was out of the picture, I didn't have to worry about him targeting my family. Even if he did.
Yeah.
Now that I had gotten a better understanding of this world, I knew of many ways to destroy him. I didn't have to fight him head-on. I could just manipulate what was around him in a way that his life would turn into hell. Pausing my thoughts there, lightly glancing at him from the side, I smiled inwardly. You should be the one that should watch their backs. All right, it seems like everyone is here. Standing by the side of the cave, Benjamin glanced at the students who were waiting behind the starting point of the cave. The way the students were huddled up together reminded him of marathons. At the front were the more confident students, and at the back were the less confident ones. Pausing, and after seeing that everyone was ready, raising his hands, Benjamin slowly said, "On your marks, get set, go."
Beep.
Swoosh. 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 Like a chain reaction, all of the students started sprinting forwards. Despite there being no light ahead of them, the students fearlessly ran through the cave-like environment, completely forgetting that this wasn't a race and that this was a dungeon. Watching the students run with all their might, I shook my head. Naive. Running ahead of the others in the beginning was probably the worst decision someone could make, especially since this was an unfamiliar environment with no knowledge of what laid ahead of them. Key hook. Key hook. Key hook. And right on cue. A few meters ahead of me, where most of the students were, yellow eyes appeared everywhere. Stopping and glancing towards the mass of eyes in the distance, I couldn't help but mutter. The midterm exams have finally begun. Chapter 102, Midterms, 6. Koala. Quokka. Quokka. Like a tsunami, green-like creatures of shorter-than-human stature with flat and long hooked noses, bat-like ears, and malevolent expressions with twisted smiles appeared from every corner of the cave. Hat's that? Artiechos globans?
Hi.
Surprised by the unexpected development, the students at the front immediately stopped running and huddled up together. With their backs against each other, they each raised their weapons and nervously looked towards their surroundings. Goblins appeared en masse everywhere they looked. What do we do? I don't know. Despite goblins being the most common monsters inside of dungeons, they were still dangerous creatures. With their excellent sense of smell, hearing, and tendency to hunt in groups, many aspiring heroes fell because of them. Less needed to be said about students who had no experience of being inside of dungeons. Weary Sauron dead. Staring at the numerous goblins blocking their paths, one of the students couldn't help but say as his voice shook. Something is definitely wrong. How can there possibly be so many goblins inside of a ranked dungeon? We're all going to die. He wasn't the only one who thought of it that way, as almost everyone at the front shook in fear. I mean, although it was dark, the number of goblins before them counted to at least 1,000. How were they supposed to fight with that many goblins? Move aside, you bunch of wimpy primates. Indifferently walking ahead of the students, Melissa's figure appeared holding onto a long metal spear with flame engraving at the tip of the spear. Without giving a chance for the students to figure out what was going on, leaning backward, Melissa adjusted her position and proceeded to throw the spear in her hand. Swoosh! Like a bolt of lightning, the spear traveled through the sea of goblins, leaving behind a red trail of flames. Gotcha! Boom! Soon after, an explosion reverberated across the whole dungeon. The cave shook, and debris and dust flew everywhere. As the debris cleared up, the students couldn't help but be stunned by what they saw. What? Huh? The sea of goblins that was before them was no longer visible, and what replaced it was a single goblin wearing a mage mantle with an orb in its hand. Well, that's how it was supposed to look like. Currently, its body was lifelessly sitting on the hard ground with a spear imbued on top of its head. Is that a goblin mage? Hat? So it was all an illusion? Regaining their bearings somewhat, everyone stared at the body of the goblin that was currently lifelessly laying on the ground. They soon understood what had happened. Everything was the works of a goblin mage. A more evolved and rarer version of a regular goblin. The goblin mage had created an illusion to scare the students into thinking that they were currently facing a horde of goblins. It was a fairly common strategy they used to hunt down their prey. It was also not that hard to spot if one paid close attention. All they had to do was look for the reflection that the orb the goblin mage made. As soon as you spotted the orb, you could instantly find where the goblin mage was and thereafter kill it. We had learned this in class, but it was evident that most students had forgotten this beforehand. Perhaps it was due to their excitement or their nervousness, but it seems like everything that the students had learned in class was completely forgotten. Walking ahead of everyone, with the most gentle smile Melissa could muster, looking back at the students at the front, she said, "Next time you're scared, don't block the paths for others. You're honestly a nuisance, so please either die or move out of the way. Thank you very much." With that, without looking back, Melissa picked up her spear and dashed deeper into the cave. Standing at the back, looking at Melissa's disappearing figure, I nodded my head repeatedly. That's Melissa for you. Yup, yup, yup. Spitting venomous words with the most gentle face possible, only Melissa could pull it off. Though I do have to say, despite the fact that Melissa was only F-ranked, her power was no joke. Even I would have trouble defending against that throw. I'd say 2 to 3 rings would do the trick. Let's go. Follow her. Watching Melissa leave, some of the students woke up from their daze and immediately followed from behind her. Hoo. Glancing at some of the students that followed Melissa's footsteps, taking a deep breath, I too started moving. Time waited for no one. Since timing was one of the criteria used to assess the performance of the students, I couldn't waste any more time lazing about. Channeling the mana inside of my body, I activated drifting steps. Thereafter, as I moved forwards, with each step I took, the wind scions beneath my feet would intensify. Shortly after I activated drifting steps, I found myself freely running across the dungeon as my speed increased by small increments with each step I took. Whoosh! What was that? Huh? Like a streak of light, I quickly and swiftly surpassed some of the students who were running ahead. Though I was still far from the first-placed people, I was confident that I would soon catch up to them. Clank! 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 As I moved forward, the loud sound of students fighting against goblins appeared everywhere. Moving my body slightly, I managed to somewhat dodge the battles, but I knew that avoiding fights wasn't an option. And I was right. A couple of goblins soon appeared before me, obstructing my path. Because I was moving so fast, I didn't have enough time to stop. Hence, briefly glancing towards my surroundings to make sure no one was looking, I lightly tapped on the sheath of my katana. Click! Thud! Thud! Soon after, 2 green heads rolled on the ground. It all happened so fast that even if cameras were present, they wouldn't have been able to pick up what had happened. Instantaneous. Right after the heads of the goblins hit the ground, 10 meters ahead of where the goblins were, I managed to finally stop my body from moving. Jogging back towards where the goblins were, I quickly grabbed the heads of the goblins and tapped twice on the right area of my chest. Soon after, the heads disappeared from my hands. And as soon as the heads of the goblins disappeared from my hands, a large, too, appeared on the right side of my arm where a black band was located. Checking my band, nodding slightly, rather than activating drifting steps, I jogged forwards. The roads of the cave had become narrower, moreover, the ground wasn't flat, making it hard for me to gather enough momentum without doing anything unnecessary. Like that, for the next 30 minutes, either passed students or hunted down goblins or the other monsters that tried to ambush me as I moved forwards. This is a good pace. As I jogged, the right side of my arm had a large 55 engraved on it. Though it was a lot, it was still far from the likes of Kevin and the rest. I mean, if I didn't remember incorrectly, Kevin came back with a score of 215 back in the novel. Therefore, 55 should still be within the scope of my abilities and thus prevent me from getting more attention. But isn't 55 already good? Not, it wasn't. 79. That was my current goal. I had estimated that this target would be the best in order for me to achieve the top 100. That was with me taking into consideration that my written exam score would be below average. Though hard, it wasn't impossible. Especially since I could freely use the keiki style, as no one was watching, well, when I sure there was no one around. Pretty much the areas where the second and third years weren't present. After a bit more hunting, I soon arrived at a fork road that separated into 3 different directions. Without even thinking about it hard, I quickly moved towards the right area. All right, let's go. Just as I was turning towards the right path, I heard a deep voice coming from the left side of my ears. Glancing towards where the voice came from, I soon noticed a tall individual with a buzz cut and thick glare. It was evident that he had purposely waited for me. There you are. How are you doing, Arnold? Without responding to me, with his arms crossed, Arnold moved towards the middle of the cave, obstructing my path. I've been waiting for you. Chapter 103, Midterms, 7. I've been waiting for you. Slowly walking in my direction, Arnold smirked. I should have taken care of you shortly after what had happened in the virtual world, but because of everything that had happened in Hallberg and the many other things going on with my life, I completely forgot about an insect like you. But worry not, now that I've remembered. I'm going to make sure you suffer. Crack. Cracking his neck, Arnold disdainfully looked at me. Let's start by making you fail the exam. Watching Arnold walking in my direction, raising my hands, I slowly backed off. Smiling wryly, I said, Arnold, let's talk things out. Let's not get physical, shall we? Yes. We will talk. But not with our mouths. Boom. Finished with what he wanted to say, Arnold tensed his calves and propelled his body forwards. Like a bullet, he quickly appeared before me. Noticing his actions, as I watched him appear before me, I couldn't help but curse out loud. Oh, come on, man. Why must people always resort to violence? Die. As Arnold arrived a few meters before me, I saw his huge fist heading towards my face. Sigh. Sighing, moving my head to the side, the fist flew past my head. Soon after, before Arnold could make out how I had dodged it, clenching my fist and concentrating my mana there, I threw a punch towards his right upper area. Bam! A shockwave swept the surroundings. Kua. Before Arnold could even have time to react, my fist connected to his liver. Soon after, he found himself on the ground kneeling. KKHHHHHH. As saliva dripped from the corner of his mouth, Arnold tried standing up. But was a futile effort on his end. His legs refused to budge. As he tried to move, it felt as though a jolt of electricity coursed through his body from his liver down to his right leg and up to his brainstem. Within about half a second of when my fist connected to his liver, Arnold found his body paralyzed on the ground. He was in complete agony, unable to breathe, stand, or think clearly. No matter how much he tried to stand up, he couldn't. It's pointless. I concentrated everything I had towards your liver area. Staring at Arnold squirming on the ground, I slowly walked up to him and said, If you've paid attention in class, as the liver is one of the largest organs in the human body when faced with a stimulus, the liver releases both the body toxins it tries to filter and a very large amount of blood back into the body, resulting in your body completely shutting down as a means of self-preservation. Squatting down, at Arnold's eye level, I grabbed him by the hair and slowly said, So regardless of how much you want to stand up, your body won't allow it. Regaining some clarity, staring at me with wide eyes, Arnold couldn't help but mutter, how. It had to be noted that despite the fact that he was caught off guard even though he never took his opponent seriously, Arnold shouldn't have been this hurt from a simple punch. Especially since he specialized in defense. Unless his opponent had higher stats than him, it was impossible. Recalling the fact that his target was only ranked 2 months prior, he didn't believe he had higher stats than him. It was impossible. Moreover, the blow came too fast and too precisely. Almost as if he had been waiting for that moment since the very beginning. Slowly he came to a realization. You've been waiting for this moment since the very beginning. Smiling, I didn't reply. His analysis wasn't wrong. I indeed had been expecting his attack from the very beginning. With Arnold being a somewhat important character in the latter half of the novel, I thoroughly analyzed his fighting style. And when I did, I noticed that he had a habit of always starting a fight with a right hook. From there, it was fairly easy. With him thinking I was weak, I pretty much exploited the opening he created when he punched in my direction and hit him straight in the liver with the fastest and strongest attack I could muster. What I did wasn't rocket science. It was just a simple analysis. What are you trying to say? Pretending to not have understood what Arnold was saying, I leaned my head forward. Let go of my head. Glaring at me, Arnold with both hands on the ground tried to stand up. I said he tried, but it's not like I was going to let him stand up. Since I had the advantage, I wasn't just going to throw it away like that. Pulling him by the hair, I smashed his face on the ground. Bam! Kowhau. Nope, stay down. You need to rest a little more. I'll kill you. With his nose dripping with blood, I soon found, to my surprise, Arnold's head lunging in my direction. Almost like he wanted to bite me. Wow. His action caught me off guard. Moving my head backward, raising my hand by reflex, a loud slap resounded across the empty space. Slap. Staring at my hand that had turned red, I couldn't help but raise my voice at Arnold. My God, what is wrong with you, Arnold? There's no need to resort to biting. What are you, a monkey? I'll kill you. Slap. Slapping him once again, a red mark appeared on Arnold's face. Looking at Arnold, I apologetically said, Arnold, I'm just trying to calm you down. Please don't take it to heart. Slap. As a rule-abiding student, it is my duty to help fellow students who are in trouble. Slap. Ignoring the fact that Arnold's cheeks were progressively getting bigger, I continuously slapped him in the face. Like that, for the next minute, loud slapping sounds reverberated across the area I was in. As I continuously slapped Arnold in the face, I soon saw tears streaming down from the side of his cheeks. They were probably due to the pain. But I didn't care. He needed to be taught a lesson. I was no longer the passive me from back then. Although I still loved to not stand out, that didn't mean I would stand by and get abused like before. If my opponent was someone I absolutely couldn't pick a fight with, I would endure, but if it wasn't, well, good luck. Slap. After another round of slaps, lightly laughing, I stopped. Arnold's cheeks were currently a dark shade of blue, and his eyes were completely hidden beneath his swollen cheeks. Letting go of his hair, I stood up. Patting my body, I jokingly said, Anyways, since you specialize in defense, these slaps shouldn't hurt you, right? Just take it as me caressing your cheeks gently. KKK. As Arnold was on the ground battered, although he tried to speak, because of how swollen his cheeks were, barely any sound came out from his mouth. Ignoring him and glancing around, I sighed in relief. Fortunately, no one witnessed what had happened. It most probably had to do with the fact that all the stronger students were already ahead, but currently, no one saw me educating Arnold. Of course, as I was educating Arnold, I made sure to not overdo it. Altoag the second and third years were here, they didn't actually know what was going on. They were only here to either monitor some of the students or rescue them when they were in danger. So, if Arnold showed any signs of being in danger, his suit would immediately light up, warning the second and third years of the fact that he was in danger. Only then would they move. Thus, when I was educating him like the good student I was, I had to be careful not to severely injure him. What's going on here? Just as I finished dealing with Arnold, a crisp and pleasant voice entered my ears, prompting me to freeze on the spot. Huh? Soon, Melissa's figure emerged from the middle road of the forked paths. Glancing at me for a second, her eyesight soon paused on Arnold's sorry state. Coughing lightly, my mouth twitched. Kiam. Would you believe me if I said he tripped? No. Though Arnold couldn't see, his ears were working. As soon as he noticed someone coming, he immediately tried to speak. However, before he could do so, I immediately placed my foot on his face and stopped him from speaking. "Shut up, I'm talking over here." Looking at the scene before her, Melissa was speechless. I mean, it didn't take someone with a high IQ to understand what had happened. Soon an awkward silence prevailed in the surroundings. After a short pause, shaking her head, Melissa proceeded to make her way towards the left side of the fork road. "Forget I even asked. I have no interest in your kinks. Move aside, I can't be bothered to watch your circus act any longer." Pushing me away, Melissa slowly walked towards the left path of the forked roads. Smiling, I waved at her.
Bye.
"Have a safe trip. TCH. Clicking her tongue in annoyance, Melissa quickly disappeared into the distance. Watching her leave and enter the left road, I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. That road is a dead end. Aight. Gotcha. After making sure Melissa had left, looking back at Arnold, I stomped my foot on his face, knocking him out unconscious. Queek. A couple of seconds after I knocked Arnold unconscious, my ears twitched and I soon heard the sound of goblins coming from the middle path of the forked roads. Without a second thought, I quickly hid both me and Arnold in the corner, beneath a boulder. I then patiently waited for the goblins to come by. Queek. 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 1, 2, 5, perfect. Counting the goblins that passed by my direction, I managed to spot 5 goblins. A smile appeared on my face. Hew up. Without a second thought, jumping out from the boulder, I quickly appeared before the goblins. Quack. 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 Bam. Catching the goblins off guard, using my fist, I precisely hit every goblin towards the middle of their brows. Their weak spots. Kaha. Kaha. Under my quick and fast punches, the goblins died instantly. It wasn't even a fight. Done. Soon after the goblins died, without skipping a beat, I dragged their bodies towards where Arnold was and proceeded to stack them on top of him. All right, this should be perfect. Clapping my hands in satisfaction, I stared at Arnold, who was currently buried beneath a pile of goblins. When I killed the goblins, I made sure to not use my sword precisely so that it looked like it was Arnold who fought them. Something isn't right. Frowning, as I looked at Arnold beneath the pile of goblins, I fell into deep thought. It felt as if something was missing. Hitting my fist on my palm, I suddenly realized what was wrong. Gotcha. Gotcha. Arriving before the goblins, I started battering their bodies so that it didn't look like they died in one shot but that they had actually fought with Arnold. I almost neglected the obvious. After a minute of battering, touching my chin, I nodded my head multiple times. Flawless. Yup, it definitely looks like he fought against multiple goblins at once and unfortunately lost after having fought with them with his life on the line. Since he wanted to fail me, I may as well reciprocate his intentions, right? Bam. Gotcha. Glancing at Arnold one last time, I forcefully kicked him in the ribs. The sound of his ribs breaking soon resounded across the space.
Beep, beep, beep.
Soon after I broke Arnold's ribs, his suit turned red and beeping sounds started coming out from his suit.
Bye.
Now. Satisfied, I immediately ran towards the right path. 00H, 27M, 67S. Checking my watch, I smiled. Still on track. Chapter 104, Midterms 8. TSK. Another dead end. Clicking her tongue, Melissa glared at the cave wall that was blocking her way. Turning around, she once again walked back towards the entrance of the fork roads, not minding the fact that the road was littered with goblin corpses. This way, I'm sure this is the correct path. quick before the others catch up. Along the way, Melissa would occasionally spot other students running down the path, but she didn't bother to even glance at them nor speak to them. Since this was a competition, there was no need for her to tell them that this road was a dead end. Moreover, with the fact that she was walking back, it was already painfully obvious that this was a dead end. Yet the students seemed to have completely brushed this fact off. It was not her fault they were dumb. Sighing, Melissa couldn't help but speed up her pace. After all, the faster the time the better the score. As Melissa ran, she couldn't help but wish to get this over with. In reality, she didn't particularly care about her exam. Her specialty lied in the theoretical area, meaning that she had no interest in fighting. If not for the fact that her parents practically begged for her to enroll at the lock, she would have never have come to this place. Damn this. If not for the fact that she chose the wrong path twice, Melissa estimated that she would have been first by a long shot. She had wasted a lot of time. Though she didn't particularly care about the exam, that didn't mean she wanted to botch it either. Even if her specialty laid in the theoretical area, she still wanted to get a good score. After all, for a perfectionist like her, anything below top 5 was a failure. Fortunately, the dungeon was still long and thus she could still reach first place, but the fact that she wasted time irked her. Thus, without pause, she soon ran back to the entrance at full speed.
Beep, beep, beep.
As she reached the entrance of the cave, Melissa soon heard the loud and continuous beeping sounds coming from the other side of where she was. Frowning slightly, slowing down her steps, she soon spotted 3 third-years squatting down and treating a student. HM? Getting a closer look at who the student in question was, Melissa was slightly taken aback. Wasn't that Arnold? She recognized him instantly. I mean, he was Jin's lackey after all. Whenever Jin was present, he too was present. Though not anymore, with Jin always sticking around her whenever he had a chance, she had obviously seen Arnold several times in the past. He too annoyed her. Especially since all he did was lick Jin's ass. But why was he passed out on the ground? According to what she remembered, Arnold, being Jin's lackey, was a fairly strong individual. Pretty much the same strength as her. Before the trial started, she had estimated that apart from him, no one else would really pose a threat to her in terms of power. So, how in the world was he in such a state? Wait. Recalling something, Melissa couldn't but be slightly startled. She had just remembered her encounter with Rin, prior to when she entered the left path. Although at that time she didn't know who Rin was beating up, due to how battered the victim's face was, she now had a feeling that it was in fact Arnold. That time, Melissa thought Rin was beating a relatively weaker student who had picked a fight with him. She thought that the dispute was over an insignificant matter like the corpse of a goblin. Such disputed happened quite often, as every goblin head counted for an extra point for the exam. Therefore she didn't stick around for too long and just went her way. But the last thing she expected was for that student to be Arnold. After all, Rin didn't particularly strike her as a strong individual. However, it seems like she was wrong. It turns out that he was capable of beating the likes of Arnold. Arnold was a fairly muscular and tall male. Although she didn't get a clear look last time, as she looked at Arnold on the ground being helped by the third years, Melissa felt that this was the same body frame as the person Rin was beating up. This sort of surprised her. Though she was surprised to see Rin appear in the rank section, she didn't put much thought into it. After all, she did give him potions. With the aid of her potions, forcefully entering rank wasn't an impossible feat, but seeing Arnold battered on the floor, it seemed like his combat strength wasn't to be underestimated. To be able to one-sidedly beat Arnold. Hard. Very hard. Even if you ambushed him, with how robust his body frame and defenses were, such an accomplishment was hard. Watching the third years applying ointment all over Arnold's face, Melissa frowned. The more she got to know about Ren, the more she felt that he was strange. From the incident back in Professor Romhaus' class to the theory he had given her, and to the fact that he could easily bully Arnold. Ren Dover had shown her many surprises. Glancing at the third year carrying Arnold's body away, the frown in Melissa's face didn't lessen one bit. Ren Dover. He was definitely hiding something. Whoosh. 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 Inside of a damp cave-like environment, 3 streaks of light split the air apart, and a whistle arose. Spurt. 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 Soon after, green blood splashed everywhere as 3 goblins lifelessly fell down on the ground. Thanks. Putting her short swords away, Emma, who was a few meters away from the goblins, glanced at Amanda, who was a few meters behind her, and thanked her. With both of them being rank, they had naturally decided to team up. Moreover, with the fact that they were friends, they didn't need to worry about anyone backstabbing them. Glancing towards the deeper end of the dungeon, Emma glanced at Amanda and asked, "Is Jean up ahead?" Nodding her head, Amanda responded, "He is with Troy." Frowning, placing her hand on her chin, Emma couldn't help but ask, "Troy? If I remember correctly, he is the guy with yellow pupils and is always with Arnold, right?" "Yes." Getting confirmation from Amanda, Emma's frown deepened. "Honestly, that guy seriously creeps me out. Whenever I see him standing behind Jean, I always get this double-faced feeling coming from him." Turning her head towards Amanda, Emma couldn't help but ask, "Is it just me who feels that way?" Shaking her head, Amanda responded, "No." She too felt a similar feeling whenever she saw Troy. He was dangerous. Altoug Jean seemed to be oblivious to it. Amanda, who always picks up on little things regarding people's behavior, noticed Troy always behaving weirdly. Especially whenever he was with Jean. He would always have a polite smile on his face whenever he was with him, but on rare occasions, his face would turn extremely serious. Almost as if he had no emotions. If someone didn't pay attention, chances were that they were going to miss this point, but Amanda managed to catch him doing it 3 times already. Altoug, she knew that something was wrong. She didn't pry too deeply. Considering how Jean always behaved, it wasn't strange for Troy to hate him, but now that Emma was also pointing it out, it seems like his shows of hatred had started to become more blatant. Amanda was starting to feel that something big was about to happen to Jean. But this was only her gut feeling. She couldn't confirm it. Enough talk about Troy. Do you know what the others are up to? Snapping Amanda out of her thoughts was Emma, who quickly cut the heads off of some of the goblins and put them into her dimensional space. Handing some of the heads to Amanda, Emma continued, "I know Melissa is in the leveled dungeon, so she should be fine. Kevin is also by himself in the D-Sec." Pausing her thoughts there, Emma couldn't help but frown as she muttered to herself, "God, just what kind of monster is he?" She had known since Hallberg that Kevin had reached rank, but recalling this fact once again, she couldn't help but once again be reminded by how ridiculous he was. Rank at the age of 16? Almost unheard of. Even Jean, who was extremely talented and full of resources, was only rank. Just imagine how much of a monster Kevin was for reaching that level without being handed the same amount of resources as Jean. After a bit of thinking, Emma couldn't help but say out loud, "I'm sure that at the moment, no one in our first years can beat him." Hearing what Emma said, Amanda nodded. However, a second after she nodded, she recalled something. Hesitating for a second, looking at Emma, Amanda carefully said, "What about him?" Tilting her head in confusion, Emma looked at Amanda and said, Who are you referring to when you say him?" "I mean Re-.
Ah.
But before Amanda finished speaking, Emma suddenly realized whom Amanda was speaking of and quickly raised her hand and blocked her mouth. With her hand still on Amanda's mouth, Emma clenched her teeth and angrily said, "Don't ever mention that guy's name to me again." Question mark. Taken aback by Emma's sudden outburst, Amanda found herself unable to speak due to her blocking her mouth. She didn't know what to do. Moreover, just what did he do to piss Emma off so badly? Stomping her feet in anger, not minding Amanda, Emma couldn't help but curse out loud. "Ghhhhh, just thinking about him pisses me off to no end. Oh, how I wish I could beat him to a pulp. Do you know what he did to me? He bah." Like that, for the next minute, Emma vented out her frustrations on Amanda. In the end, Amanda could only helplessly stare at Emma as she ranted about her experience in the train ride. And so that's what happened. Finally venting everything out, taking her hands off Amanda, Emma quickly turned around and dived deeper into the dungeon. "Let's go, I suddenly don't feel like talking anymore." Glancing at Amanda behind her, Emma urged her to follow along. Right now, any talks regarding Ren would immediately send her into a rage. Recalling what had happened during her train ride back, Emma could feel her blood boiling. Just who did he think he was to ignore her like that? The disrespect. Ren Dover. This was a name she wouldn't quite forget for a while. Chapter 105, Midterms, 9. Achoo, achoo, achoo. Yo, what's up with me today? Is it really true that I'm immune to the flu? I mean, I've been sneezing too many times lately. It's not even funny anymore. In the end, I let it go as I had more pressing issues to take care of. Wiping my nose, I headed deeper into the dungeon. As I headed deeper into the dungeon, I refrained from running. Honestly, I was pretty much walking. Currently, the armband on my arm had a large 79 displayed on it. After killing a few more goblins, I pretty much hit my goal. Since I've accomplished what I had set my mind to from the very beginning, the rest wasn't a priority. I didn't need to get a good time as I've already secured a high score for this examination. Funnily enough, I think that even though I was walking, I was currently one of the fastest students. I mean, on multiple occasions I've seen students pass me, but after a short bit, I would eventually surpass them as they would always be held back by goblins. This happened so many times, that I estimated that I was pretty much one of the fastest people present. Perhaps walking was the most efficient method. I mean, just let the students who were in a rush handle all of the goblins in your stead. At this point, rather than this being an exam, it was just me having a leisurely stroll. Clank. Clank. Help. As I was walking, I soon saw a student in distress. Squinting my eyes, I soon spotted him fighting multiple goblins at once. 2 regular goblins and a goblin knight? Getting a better look at his situation, I soon spotted him being surrounded by 2 regular goblins and a goblin that was wearing a knight armor. A goblin knight.
Yeah.
The further I went into the dungeon, the more variations of goblins I spotted. I saw a goblin mage on multiple occasions, a goblin knight, a goblin fighter. Just why did there have to be so many types of goblins? Okay, this was my fault on my end, as I was too lazy to come up with different monsters, but still, past me, couldn't you have been a little bit more original? Sigh. In the end, I could only sigh at how unoriginal I was at times. To have considered this novel a masterpiece, I don't know what I was on at that time. Either way, looking at the student who was desperately looking at me, I raised my hands and innocently said, "Don't look at me, just having a leisurely stroll here." I mean, his intentions were obvious. Use me as cannon fodder for him to get rid of the goblins or transfer them to me. This way he could reap all of the benefits whilst I struggle to deal with the goblins. Like the professor said, never trust someone inside of dungeons. I've learned this lesson the hard way. WHAT, help, I'm in danger here. How can you let a fellow student fail? After this we can work together. Nodding my head seriously, I solemnly looked at the student before me and reassured him. You're going to be fine, the school won't let you die, so just hold on tight, okay? You know what, I'll do you one better. Once I get out, I'll share your struggles with one of the professors, maybe he'll help you then, okay? Clank. Clank. W8, no, help. Like that, I waved at the student and left. No matter how much he screamed, I just ignored him. Honestly, his plan would have worked if I had a hero complex, but I didn't. Moreover, it really didn't take a genius to figure out his intentions. Just the way he was positioning his body made his intentions obvious. If you were really in trouble, you wouldn't be facing the goblins at an angle, but you would be directly confronting them from the front. Moreover, the fact that his clothes were still without a single scratch made it obvious that this was a trap. Yo, I won't forget this. Shaking my head, I couldn't help but say.
Yeah.
That's what every third-rate villain says. Get an original quote for once. Soon after I said that, the students' not-so-PG curses reverberated throughout the area I was in. I didn't really care though, I was pretty much already near the exit of the dungeon. Spurt. 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 In a different dungeon, the figure of silhouette quickly moving through the narrow paths of the dungeon could be seen. Occasionally, as the figure passed by the monsters present in the dungeon, without stopping, he would directly hack towards them and kill them precisely in one blow. He was swift and decisive. His every sword strike flowed like water, smoothly and seemingly with no lag in between each movement. What was especially striking about the figure were his two blood-red eyes that shone under the dark cave-like environment. He looked like the apex predator of the dungeon. Ruthless. Whenever he passed, devastation would be left in his wake. Damn it, how is he so strong? A few meters away from Kevin, following behind him, 3 students wearing red-colored uniforms couldn't help but curse out loud as they saw the numerous monster carcasses by the side of the cave. They ranged from goblins to kobolds and many other monsters that weren't present in the lower-end dungeons. As they ran, trying their best to follow Kevin, one of the red-clothed youths couldn't help but say out loud. Damn it! If we don't succeed in making him fail, we won't be able to get into the Blood Supremacy faction. Let's pick up the pace. It was true. The 3 youths that were following Kevin were right now trying to accomplish a mission they had been assigned moments before entering the dungeon. Prior to entering the dungeon, they had been approached by several members of the Blood Supremacy faction, one of the top factions of the academy. The reason they approached them was to offer them a chance to enter their faction. As long as they completed the task they had been assigned, they would be allowed into the faction. Back then, after hearing what their tasks consisted of, they immediately agreed. To them, it wasn't something that was actually that hard. Stop Kevin from passing. If they managed to succeed in making Kevin fail, they would be granted access to the Blood Supremacy faction, which would bestow great honor upon their families. Enticed by the offer, the 3 youths tried their best to make things difficult for Kevin. However, they had severely underestimated how strong Kevin was. As they ran, glancing towards the youth that just spoke, another youth couldn't help but shout back. We're already doing our best here. Then how in the world are we still slower than him despite the fact that he is fighting monsters too? Damn it, I don't know. Listening to the 2 youths conversing, the last youth remained silent. After a while, he slowed down his pace and stopped. Let's stop. Noticing the youth's odd behavior, the 2 other youths slowed down their pace and turned towards him. Huh? What's going on, Marcus? Glancing at the 2 youths before him, after hesitating for a bit, the youth called Marcus spoke. Gee guys, let's just give up. Opening their eyes wide, the two youths couldn't help but find their voices raise a few pitches. What? Why? Noticing the surprised expression of his two comrades, Marcus clenched his fist and said, If we can barely catch up, how are we supposed to prevent him from passing the exam? He's a monster. I don't think joining blood supremacy would outweigh the cost of offending someone like him. Like him? Someone who is bound to reach S rank, no, SS rank. Finished with what he was saying, silence prevailed in the surroundings. The two youths couldn't find any words to rebuke Marcus with. They too felt that what he said had some merit. Although they wanted to refute Marcus's statement with all their might, they couldn't. Especially not after witnessing firsthand how powerful Kevin was. Kevin, with his talent, was bound to reach the S or SS rank. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. No. Clenching his fists, one of the youths shouted. We're already committed, we can't give up now. Glancing towards Leo, the other youth, Carl, shook his head and stopped moving. Lowering his head in defeat, he said. No, Leo, Marcus is right. There's no point in going through this trouble to offend a potential SS-ranked hero just to join a faction that might not even take us seriously, it's not worth it. What? Not you too, Carl. Lowering his head, the other youth named Carl, apologetically said. Sorry. Staring at both Carl and Marcus for a few seconds, Leo, the last youth, clicked his tongue and turned around. TSK, you both are a bunch of cowards. Pointing at both Carl and Marcus, Leo said. I'll report this back to the higher-ups, about the fact that you both pussied out at the last moment. Kiss your chances of joining blood supremacy.
Goodbye.
Without waiting for them to respond, Leo stormed off deeper into the dungeon. Phew-uck. Cursing out loud, Leo clenched his jaws and fists hard. How did he end up being paired up with two pussies? What was so great about Kevin? Although yes, he agreed with them with the fact that he was bound to reach SS rank in the future, nothing was set in stone. What if he died? Wouldn't they have just lost an opportunity to join a faction that would help them in the future? For what? A dead person? Moreover, they were all ranked. There shouldn't be that much of a difference between them. Bunch of cowards. Moving forward, glancing downwards, he saw a pile of goblins' carcasses on the ground. Kacha. Pooh. Kicking the goblin to the side, Leo couldn't help but spit at the goblin corpse and curse out loud. Fucking goblin. Quika. 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 Ha. Moments after he did that, multiple enraged sounds reverberated throughout the whole dungeon. The ground shook. What's going on? Moments after, in the distance, what met his sight almost caused him to have a heart attack. It was a sea of goblins with red eyes madly sprinting in his direction. Seemingly lost in rage. Why are there so many goblins? Taking a step back, Leo opened his eyes wide. Soon after, he sprinted backward with all his might. Shh! Help! Chapter 106, Midterms, 10. Congratulations student rank 1550 Rendover, time taken to complete dungeon 01H, 46M, 08S. Exiting the dungeon, I soon heard the speaker on the side of the dungeon announce my result. Glancing at the time, my mouth couldn't help but twitch. To be honest, that was a lot faster than I had expected. Moreover, there was one teeny-tiny problem regarding my score. And it was that I walked throughout the whole way out.
Yeah.
I walked. I never increased my pace once. My path was so unobstructed and unexciting that all I did was really just take a stroll. I normally wouldn't have complained, but well, it just was so anticlimactic that I was at a loss for words. I guess not being Kevin really did make a difference. No unexpected events happened. I guess I was so used to things always happening to me that I had completely forgotten that I wasn't the protagonist. Trouble wouldn't come knocking at my door unless I looked for it, unlike Kevin, who was the opposite. He had trouble looking for him. With regards to my timing, the only time I wasted was probably when I was educating Arnold, but that barely took like 10 minutes. As I got out of the dungeon, even though I probably scored amongst the highest of the first years, no one was paying attention to me. Why? Quick, get the healers. Call for all ranked members we can get. We've got a horde of goblins inside of the ranked level. We've received reports regarding multiple supervising students that are barely holding on.
Yeah.
Sort of forgot that was supposed to happen. Somehow, I felt a bond akin to camaraderie towards the student that had triggered the goblin horde. I too understood how it felt to be under the constant attacks of multiple enraged goblins at once. If I had to be honest, wasn't the greatest experience. Glancing at the chaos that was ensuing, I shook my head and headed back to my dorm. Since my score had been recorded by the school system, there was no need for me to stay behind. Moreover, I had a far more pressing issue at hand. It was finally time I started planning for my future company. A couple of hours after the goblin incident, Donna's office space.
Ha.
Having just come back from sorting out an incident that had just happened during the examination for the first years, Donna was exhausted. Who knew goblins had such a quirk? Sitting on a large leather chair, in front of a large desk where multiple monitors were set up, Donna sighed. Sigh. She had just come back from an hour-long meeting with the other faculty professors regarding a certain incident that happened in the ranked difficulty dungeon. A mass goblin horde of enraged goblins. In the end, after checking the body cams of the dungeon supervisors, they were able to find out two things. 1. What triggered the mass goblin horde, and 2. The fact that the Blood Supremacy faction had targeted Kevin. In the end, although Donna wanted to do something with regards to the interference of the Blood Supremacy faction, she couldn't do anything as there wasn't enough evidence. At the end of the day, it was the students' word against theirs. Unless they had concrete proof detailing their plan, the school board wouldn't move. Especially since the Blood Supremacy group consisted of many powerful individuals. Although Kevin was important to them, as long as his life wasn't threatened, the academy wouldn't antagonize such a large faction. Damn it. Just recalling the triumphant smirk Gilbert had on his face during the meeting irked Donna to no end. She was so close to sending him straight to the hospital. But out of sheer willpower, she managed to hold back. More so because she remembered who his father was. Sigh. Sighing once again, Donna turned on her laptop and replayed some of the camera footage she got from the supervising students inside of the dungeon. Soon, a series of battles that were caught from the webcams of the second and third years in the dungeon trial was being played in front of the monitor before her. The first footage she got was regarding Kevin. Kevin's swordsmanship was just like what she had first seen back in the enrollment test. Beautiful. His every sword strike was light as a feather. However, beneath those gentle sword strikes laid a heavy destructive power that connected fluidly with his next move. Every time he hacked with his sword, the strike would appear and disappear constantly. Seemingly like a mirage. Unless you were an expert in judging the mana flow in the air, his attack pattern would be completely unknown, making it especially hard to fight against. Aside from that, whenever he fought without using his sword art, each of his movements was natural like flowing water. His swordsmanship was so well polished and sharpened that it seemed more suitable to call it a performance rather than swordsmanship. It was evident that he had put blood, sweat and tears in getting to where he was now. He wasn't ranked 1 for nothing. He was both talented and hardworking. The perfect student in Donna's book. Next was Jean. His attacks with the daggers were truly domineering and vicious. He stabbed directly at his opponent's heart and brutalized anyone who was constantly on the defensive. Using his speed to his advantage, he constantly cut, smacked, and stabbed every goblin that was before him. Rather than a trial, it was more like a one-sided massacre. After checking Jean, Donna then proceeded to check the logs of the more outstanding students. From Amanda, Emma, Melissa, Han Yufei, and many more. As she watched, she scribbled down anything that she thought they could improve on. For example, Amanda tended to waste too much time replenishing her quiver whenever it ran out of arrows. Donna thought that if she managed to reduce that time, she would become even more deadly for the opponents. Donna believed that the short time frame Amanda used to switch in between quivers could prove fatal for her, especially since it created an opening for the opponent to exploit. She definitely needed to watch out for that. Of course, Amanda wasn't the only one with flaws. Everyone had flaws. Kevin included. Therefore, for the next 10 minutes or so, Donna wrote what she felt her students needed to work on. However, as she was analyzing the footage, she soon paused on a certain video. Him again? Appearing before the screen was the image of a student leisurely walking down the dungeon. He had jet black hair and deep blue eyes. Though his looks weren't bad, he looked average in every way, but that wasn't the reason why Donna was paying close attention to him. Aside from the suspicious things that she had caught him doing during the Hallberg incident, the reason why Donna was surprised by the video was because of the student's expression as he walked. He looks bored. Bored?
Yeah.
He truly did look bored. Just his posture alone made her think so, as it carried no hint of wariness of his surroundings. His back was hunched, and his arms were drooping on the ground. Exactly how a bored person would look like. Scanning through the camera footage, the only thing Donna saw was just him walking around the dungeon unobstructed, completely bored out of his mind. Like that, for the next 5 minutes, that's all Donna saw. What is going on? Is there any more footage? After the first clip ended, taking out another file belonging to another supervising student, Donna quickly replayed the file and checked the footage for any signs of the student of interest. Same thing. In the end, after 10 more minutes of scanning, she was once again presented with the same image of him just walking down the dungeon bored out of his mind. Just what's going on? Why were there only videos of him walking and not fighting? Something didn't add up. Checking more files, Donna was once again presented with the same scenario over and over again. Just what? The problem with the videos that Donna was shown was that the student in question barely appeared in them. He only appeared for at most 5 minutes in each clip. There really wasn't that much footage regarding him. And this was mostly due to the fact that he wasn't a student of interest according to some professors. Meaning that not many second and third years were monitoring him, unlike the higher-ranked students. Therefore, he only appeared sparingly. Only when the third years were already present in that location recording from their body cams that footage of him appeared. Other than that, everything else he did during the dungeon raid was a mystery. You could do that? In the end, after hours of footage, Donna was able to understand what had happened. And when she did, she was completely speechless. Turns out that the student in question, because of the fact that he was walking, managed to avoid all of the monsters in his way. Each time he was surpassed by a student, they would immediately fight against the monsters that were ahead of him. They were pretty much clearing the path for him. This way, throughout the whole time he was making his way out of the dungeon, he didn't have to fight a single monster. But wait. Stopping the footage midway, Donna soon noticed something. Tap. 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 Quickly typing at her keyboard, Donna furiously looked through the series of data that displayed the scores of some of the students. Soon her eyes paused on a student's profile. equals 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 equals. Student, Rendover. Dungeon clear time, 01H, 46M, 08S. Head count, 79. Equals 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 equals. Head count 79? Just when did he kill that many goblins? Throughout all the footage she saw, she never saw him lift a finger once. How was it possible for him to have such a head count? Something wasn't right. Quickly cross-referencing with the footage she got, she soon found out that from time 00H, 57M, 29S, student Rendover, had a head count of 79. From that point onwards, it didn't move. Lightly licking her lips, Donna's brows furrowed. 79 goblins in less than 1 hour, that speed is comparable to the score of some her best students. Click. After looking at the videos for a bit longer, closing down the tabs, Donna leaned back on her leather chair. Crossing her legs, she couldn't help but mutter to herself. Student Rendover, it seems that there really is something special about you. Chapter 107, Deals and Feels, 1. Unaware of the attention I was getting from a certain instructor, I walked back to my dorm. My mind was currently preoccupied with something that I had been meaning to do since back in the Northern District. Start my own company. I had long realized that financing myself through one-time cash endeavors wasn't going to cut it. I needed a more long-term solution. Something that would last me for a long time. Hence why I was currently in deep thought. I already knew what I was going to sell. It was a product that was still not out yet. A revolutionary product, as some might call it. Mana cards. A concept that only appears in the latter half of the novel, and sweeps through the market like a storm. Something that both villains and heroes crave. An item that enables people to manifest spells without the need to actually learn the spells. According to the timeline of the novel, it was currently only in the developmental phases. No, rather, it was probably still not there yet. Perhaps only the idea was there, but no one actually decided to go through with it yet. Though I didn't know how to fully create them, as I never went into too much detail in my novel, I knew a general concept. What resources were needed to create the cards, and the general concept behind how it worked. Moreover, I didn't actually need to know all the details with regards to how to make them. That wasn't my job. That was someone else's job. I would provide them with the concept and they would develop it for me. That was the first part of my plan. Of course, having a product wasn't the only thing required in order to set up a company. Though crucial, there were other things I needed, such as an outlet to protect and add value to my product. Something that would give my company both protection and publicity. Fortunately, I had already thought of a solution to my problem. Get a backer. A backer that could both protect my product from competitors as well as bring a good name to it, and I knew just the right person in mind that could help me. Thus, in order for me to carry out my plan of creating a company, I needed to get in contact with 2 people. Melissa and Amanda. They were the 2 people that would play an instrumental role in creating the foundation of my company. I needed to contact Melissa with regards to the creation and development of the cards, as she was the only person I knew who was smart enough to develop the product. And regarding Amanda, I needed to contact her with regards to possible cooperation with her guild. Rank 1, Diamond Ranked Guild Demon Hunter. I mean, what better backer was there? Unless you were another Diamond Ranked guild, no one would dare touch my company. Especially not when it was sponsored by the #1 ranked guild. An almost untouchable existence. Fortunately, contacting Amanda wouldn't really pose a problem for me as I knew her character well. As I've said before, Amanda always paid back her favors. And she owed me one. After all, I did save her back in Hallberg. Moreover, even if it wasn't for the fact that she owed me one, I was sure that the deal would go through, as it would also be beneficial for her guild, as it would help them gain another source of income. Who would reject such an easy source of income? Regarding Melissa, I also thought that getting her approval wouldn't be too hard, since she would also gain another source of income. After all, financing her research endeavors wasn't going to come cheaply. In the end, after contemplating for a long time, I headed back to my dorm to sort out my thoughts. I needed to do a lot of planning. Click. Hoo. Opening the door to my dorm, I quickly slumped down on the white mattress of my bed. The way back to my dorm was uneventful. Nothing really happened. Laying down on my bed, staring at the white ceiling of my room, I couldn't help but mumble to myself as my thoughts drifted in a different direction. If I rank in the top 100, I would be granted a better room, right? Though I wouldn't be in the Leviathan building, as that was exclusively for the top 10 students, perhaps there was a chance I could be upgraded to the Manticore or Hydra buildings. Right? After all, if I did rank highly, I would stand out even more. A top 100 student in the Horned Sheep building? That was like having the best footballer in the world play for a second-rate team. Just didn't make sense. Actually, regardless of my rank, I needed to change my room. Even if I had to pay for the new room. I needed my own private training room. I couldn't stand the training grounds anymore. Especially since I had to hold back whenever I trained there, as I had to be careful not to reveal the sword art I was practicing. After all, a 5-star art was extremely sought after. Probably on the same level as a ranked skill. Its value was that enormous. What else? Frowning, I started thinking of all the things I needed to sort out by the end of next month. Recruit Ava, develop the basic concept of a magic card, set up company, somehow contact Kevin with regards to going to Amora, reach E rank, mercenary stuff.
Ugh. Shh.
*T. Holding my head with both hands, I couldn't help but groan out loud. Just thinking of the things I needed to get done by the end of the month gave me a massive headache. Very depressing. Hoo. After 10 minutes of self-depression, letting out an exhausted breath, I sat up straight. All right, let's just solve one problem at a time. No point in me complaining about life. Might as well get everything over with fast so that I had fewer things to do later. And out of all the things I needed to do, I first chose to complete the basic outline of the magic card. After all, without it, I wouldn't be able to set up a company. Where is my stuff? Glancing around the room, I rummaged through some of my drawers and took out a pen and a paper. Sitting down on my desk, I quickly drew the rectangular outline of a card. The concept behind magic cards wasn't that hard. Simply put, they were cards that had spells engraved on them. Moreover, what made them special was the fact that they weren't a one-time use item. They could be used many times before needing to be replaced by a new one. Monster core powder, tulip leaf extract, orc bone marrow extract. Listing all of the items required to create the card, I turned on my phone and looked for the prices of the items I was listing. I needed to make a basic calculation of the costs of the production for each card. This way I could get a better idea of how much I needed to invest for the creation of the first batch of cards which I would present to my investors. 30,000 U, huh? After more than 30 minutes of research, I managed to get an approximate calculation of the cost of creating a card. The spell on the card was the ranked spell Ice Glaze. Honestly, it was pretty expensive for a regular person to buy, but it wasn't too absurd. Well, for big guilds, this was basically a lump change. All right, that's doable. Leaning back on my chair, I nodded my head multiple times. I of course would sell the cards for a higher price, but overall, I could already see this being a hit. I won't go into too much detail with regards to the card as I too didn't know too much about the specifics, but essentially, using the items I had just listed, a medium that could be used to store mana could be created. Through that, the medium could be turned into a magic circle through which a spell could be used. Higher ranked magic circles could also be engraved on the cards, but as obvious as it may seem, the price would shoot up dramatically. Why? Simply because higher ranked spells required more mana. Staring at the white ceiling of my room, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. I guess I will earn the ire of all magicians after this, huh? Altoag everyone could wield mana, the ones that have the most affinity with it were magicians. Through the usage of magic spells, they could invoke fireballs and many other supernatural phenomena. If magic cards were introduced, I would essentially enable people to become magicians. I could pretty much already envision a mass of low-ranked mages protesting outside of my company building. After all, with the introduction of magic cards, no one would want to partner up with them in dungeons. I mean, cards were cheaper than hiring mages. Of course, the protests would quickly die down after a while. Magic cards couldn't totally replace magicians. It may seem like that at first, but as time passes and people realize that magic cards weren't as they thought they would be, magicians would once again be sought after for dungeon raids. Especially since proficient magicians didn't need too long to cast spells, unlike the cards that required a bit of time to activate. Moreover, magic cards required a lot of mana to activate. Reason being that a lot of mana was wasted in the process of activating the card. In terms of efficiency, mana cards were not on the same level as proficient magicians. But I didn't care. With the protection of the Demon Hunter Guild, I was without a doubt going to be safe regardless of whether there was a backlash or not. Plus, no one would find out I was behind the creation of the cards as I'll just use a pseudonym. Alright, I've pretty much finished with the framework of the card, now all I have to do is contact Melissa and Amanda. After spending 2 more hours researching the cards, standing up, I stretched my back. I guess I need to make a trip to the Leviathan building, huh? Guess I did. After all, it was better if I didn't leave things for later as I had a lot of things to do. Moreover, that was where Melissa and Amanda were currently at. Welp, here goes nothing. Like that, after washing my face in the bathroom, I headed out of my room. Clank.